And we are rolling.
Good morning, and welcome to another great episode of Grounds for Development. Coming at you with some great 205 Live and NXT coverage. I am your host, Greg the Hold, joined as always by my good friend and co host, Biff Kensington. How are you doing today, Biff?
I got to be completely honest with you. Baseball is taking years off my life, so I am verklempt this morning. I'm just I'm taking up Antiques Roadshow next year. You forget this like hassle of baseball playoffs and everything. Other than that, I had an excellent day of wrestling yesterday that made up for the years being taken off my life. So all good, I guess, would be the general roundabout way of answering that question.
Good to hear. Good to hear. We had some pretty excellent shows to cover this week. Some good matches, some stuff that, especially on 205 Live, that I wasn't expected to see. So that was it was a pleasant surprise. And then we also had a debut of a new NXT show in NXT UK that we will touch on as well. So lots to get to this week.
You know what? I got to be completely honest, and I'm ashamed to admit this, given the fact that we have such an intense focus on NXT here. I had completely let it slip my mind this week that NXT UK was debuting today. It just so happens that by accident, I was surfing the internet and I saw the reminder, and I was like, you know what? I better make it a point to watch this because I had completely let it slip my mind. That's how actually intrigued I was about tonight's ordinary NXT broadcast. But boy, am I glad that we was able to get NXT UK in the rotation because that was in and of itself a really great show.
It was excellent. I caught it myself, and yeah, it was fun to see. It was fun to. The British crowds are always so much fun, so that was nice to see. And yeah, they put on a great opening day, opening episode for sure.
Yeah, I agree. The British crowds, they bring an enthusiasm that you don't really see very often in North American crowds, especially. I mean, sometimes you'll have crowds like the San Diego Raw from earlier this year where they were just up and excited to see what they're seeing. Sometimes you'll have smart crowds like in Brooklyn or Philadelphia, but the British crowds per capita are some of the best wrestling fans in the world. They're just constantly up every match. Doesn't matter who's in the ring. There's always chants going on. I know sometimes that can annoy some people, but I love it because I think it adds an energy to the show that even the regular NXT doesn't always have. So, and the aesthetic of the place too. The Corn Exchange in Cambridge is such a cool venue for wrestling. I love it's almost like half theater, half factory. It's just got such a cool, gritty vibe for wrestling, and it makes it stand out. I mean, that's the big knock on Raw and SmackDown. They all look the same. Well, this looks like something completely organic and new, and it's just a great aesthetic. We got some good commentators and Nigel McGuinness and Vic Joseph handling the duties for the show. Cool venue. It's just a cool looking brand. I'm just really excited how they put so much emphasis on the aesthetics of this show because it really paid off for them here in this debut episode.
Yeah, absolutely, and I agree on the venue. That was the first thing that stood out to me. I'm like, this is just a really cool vibe. It kind of reminded me like back when Raw first started. Where were they? The Hammerstein Ballroom or wherever it was. But just some of you could tell that you were in a different place. It felt more intimate. It felt cool, and it looked cool on camera too. So yeah, no, it looked really cool, and they had some great matches to open up their first show with. So it was a good episode to watch.
I guess we should just go ahead and jump right in because, like you said, we got some stuff here to cover, including what could be a preview of one of the big tag teams to come in the NXT UK brand. We had an opener of Joe Coffey taking on Mark Andrews. Mark Andrews just made a few guest shots on 205 Live this year. A very fun wrestler. Joe Coffey, best way to describe Joe Coffey, he's kind of, I wouldn't call him Lars Sullivan-esque. He's not that kind of wrestler, but he's definitely on the bigger side. I mean, almost reminds me of like a Steve Williams type of body, where he's really thick. He's not necessarily big. He's not fat and lumbering. He's almost like a football lineman or something. It's just kind of really, broad-based power game is what Joe Coffey kind of brings to the table. And Mark Andrews is definitely more of the cruiserweight high-flying style. But this was the opening match. Joe Coffey and his brother Mark could be a very potent force for Mustache Mountain in the tag division on this brand. I thought Joe Coffey and Mark Andrews had a hell of an opening match. It was a really interesting contrast of styles. I liked the way that Mark Andrews fought from underneath. He pulled off some really beautiful high-flying moves. I thought Joe Coffey's offense looked sharp and crisp. Definitely using the heel psychology to kind of keep control of the match. The crowd was into it. They liked what they were seeing. I can't say too awful much about this. It was exactly what you would want out of an opening match. It's not the best match ever, but it gets the crowd interested, and the viewer at home, they definitely look at this and it's like, okay, let's see what else they've got. What did you think of the match? Did you take anything away from this match that you hadn't thought of before? I'm not sure if you've seen Joe Coffey wrestle before. I know you've probably seen Mark Andrews. What was your impressions from this opener?
I agree with you. It was a solid opening match. It was good. I personally have never had a chance to see either of the Coffey brothers wrestle, so I was not familiar with them, and I appreciated the crowd there for making it clear right from the start who's the face and who's the heel in there, because they're obviously familiar with these folk. And I mean, kind of looking at it, you can pretty much figure it out for yourself. But it was a nice touch that they're cheering the faces, cheering the heels. Like you said, Mark Andrews did a great job fighting from underneath, and Coffey was looking good. I thought their styles meshed together really, really well. And yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing more of these guys. I haven't seen a lot of. This was my first time seeing Coffey, and I haven't really seen a lot of Andrews, but I like what I have seen. So I look forward to seeing more of these guys in the future.
The end of the match does end up being a win for Joe Coffey. Has the discus lariat as his finishing maneuver, which that's automatically a +1 in my book. I love the discus lariat. I love discus moves in general. I used to be a Kerry Von Erich mark, so I am a sap for discus-based offense. After the match, the Coffey brothers did try to go after Mark Andrews 2-on-1, but none other than Flash Morgan Webster out to make a save. Got the helmet and everything, beating everything that moves. So he is in to save Mark Andrews from the beatdown here. Crowd seemed very happy to see him. Whether or not this kind of sets up some of the underneath tag teams for the division, we'll have to wait and see. The first part of the show definitely seemed to be focused on the tag teams, especially with respect to Mustache Mountain, who cut a promo right after this match. As far as the promo itself goes, it was almost kind of an introduction to the show. They were really just kind of setting the stage and welcoming everyone there, kind of talking about the upcoming NXT UK tag titles, which Triple H had said are on the way. And, of course, if you've been on social media this week, you saw the actual unveiling of those belts. They are absolutely gorgeous. So there will be tag championships to be defended in the UK brand. But, my question to you, Greg, is more of a general one about Trent Seven and Tyler Bate. Do you like Mustache Mountain as a tag team, or are you more of the opinion that Tyler Bate is better off as a single star? Because there's actually kind of a split, and I didn't realize this actually existed until I talked with some people. There are a lot of fans of Mustache Mountain, the big strong boys and everything. But there's also a group of people that think Tyler Bate's better off on his own, and I'm kind of curious to see where you stand. Any thoughts on the promo and then about the tag team in general?
I'll be honest, I missed part of the promo. I did catch the gist of it, and I thought from what they were saying, it was good. Like you said, it was a good introduction to the brand and to the tag team division that they're going forth with. As to Mustache Mountain, I personally like them as a tag team. I could see down the road how Trent Seven's definitely going to be or sorry, Tyler Bate is definitely going to be a single star there. He's got all the necessary tools, but I don't think it hurts him right now to be in the tag team. And they're a good tag team. They mesh well together. Every match I've seen them put on has been spectacular. So I I like it right now and hope to see them possibly hold those tag belts for the UK brand.
They're definitely front runners for them, I think, because they're probably the most established of the tag teams. I think the Coffee Brothers could definitely be considered contenders, but Mustache Mountain has a certain credibility, and really I think that extends as much from their work overseas as it does from their work in Britain. They have kind of developed a reputation in the regular NXT brand down in Florida. Tyler Bate, of course, well known for his work in various promotions. And Trent Seven is no slouch either. I don't mean to disparage Trent in any way by focusing so much on Tyler Bate. I think the real interesting thing about this tag team is how young Tyler Bate is and how good he is. There seems to be a proliferation in wrestling right now of exceedingly talented young wrestlers in their late teens and early 20s. People who are good beyond their years that you just shouldn't be that good that young. And and Trent Seven is not. I'm not trying to suggest Trent Seven is an old man, but Tyler Bate is almost a prodigy, a phenom in the ring. As good as he is, as young as he is, it just makes you wonder, where the future lies for Tyler Bate. Is he going to be with the tag team long term? Are there bigger plans for them? And also, you have to ask yourself: is NXT UK the limit for them, or can they go a little further? We don't know exactly how things are going to shake out, whether there's going to be parity between NXT UK and the OG version of NXT in Florida. Maybe NXT UK is on the same level. Maybe it's a little bit below. We'll have to wait and see how the shows kind of filter out. But in general, I mean, Tyler Bate and Trent Seven, they have amazing chemistry as a tag team. But I just wonder, when you look at Tyler Bate, do you see someone that could be a future single star, or do you think that someone with his size might struggle trying to get over on the main roster in WWE?
That's always a concern, although not so much anymore. I mean, you've got guys that don't have the size that they used to be. Like you look at AJ Styles, he's not the biggest man out there. You look at Daniel Bryan, some of these guys, even Seth Rollins to a degree. They're not the behemoths that once dominated the championship landscape. And I believe that Bate he's got all the tools necessary to be a big name. But as you were saying, he is young. What is he? He's only 20 or 21 or something like that.
Yeah, he's very early 20s, if that. So
yeah, exactly. So that's kind of why I don't mind him in the tag team right now. I mean, as good as he is, as much as he is a phenomenal athlete, phenomenal wrestler, there's room for development there. He's still got some things to learn. Trent Seven's going to be a great mentor for him. Keep them together for a couple of years even, and you still have a long future and a bright future for Tyler Bate.
It's going to be fun to see where they go because there are so many different possibilities, and he is so young that he has time to develop even more than he already has into a world-class worker. But definitely Mustache Mountain kind of establishes themselves here with this promo as kind of the team to beat moving forward on NXT UK, at least in the short term. Speaking of size, on the opposite end of the size spectrum, we have Dave Mastiff, who I mentioned earlier. In some plane of existence, Dave Mastiff and Otis of Heavy Machinery have to meet at some point. The world needs this to happen. Dave Mastiff, he is a big boy, if you will. But he's definitely he could be easily one of the non-ironic members of the Big Strong Boys. If you wanted to. Mastiff just has an incredible, unique look. He looks like a walking condominium, to quote the late, great Gorilla Monsoon. Taking on Sid Scala here in what essentially amounted to Sid Scala's execution. Just a complete dismantling of poor Sid. And one of the most gorgeous running cannonballs I have ever seen. I love Kevin Owens. I'm a huge Kevin Owens fan. I love that Otto Vaughn's cannonball maneuver that he does in the corner. Dave Mastiff elevates it to a freaking art form. He gets air on that cannonball, and it looks so freaking painful. Mastiff obviously picks up the win here. This is a showcase for his size and strength and his power. What did you think of the bomber? And lavish praise on that cannonball, because I know you saw some glorious airtime from this big man.
That was a thing of beauty. Like, a guy that size should not be able to launch himself the way that that man does. Even the drop kick that he laid out earlier on poor Sid Scala there. Like, what 320-pound guy that's built like that? I'm sorry, you're not supposed to be throwing drop kicks and doing cannonballs in the corner the way he was doing. Very impressive. Once again, the first time I've seen this gentleman. I haven't had a lot of exposure to a lot of these British wrestlers, so I'm actually really enjoying this brand and getting some new exposure to some new names for myself.
Now, speaking of exposure, one of the great things about NXT UK in particular is really bringing to the forefront some of the unsung heroes of the last two Mae Young Classic tournaments as far as women's wrestling goes. And we had an introduction here to who undoubtedly is going to be one of the premier female competitors on the NXT UK brand. Toni Storm, very, very popular, very, very talented from Australia. Australia has a habit of producing just really strong female talent these days, following in the footsteps of Tenille Dashwood. Toni Storm took on Nina Samuels here. Very competitive match, very strong match. Toni Storm just looks and carries herself like a star. Not exactly sure how she's avoided Vince McMahon's radar to this point. You would think someone as talented as Toni Storm would have been hot-shotted to the main roster a long time ago. Be that as it may, she is absolutely fantastic here. Picks up the big win on the debut episode of NXT UK with a win over Nina Samuels, who also looks very good. And Nina got a little bit of promo time before the match as well. So that was nice to see, a little bit of character development for someone who's probably not as recognizable as Toni Storm. Obviously, Toni Storm, very big in the Mae Young Classic tournament this year. What did you see that you liked here from Nina or from Toni? Are you enthused that these women have a new outlet to kind of showcase their stuff beyond the Mae Young Classic? And is there any of the Mae Young talent that you would like to see filter into the women's division on NXT UK in the weeks and months to come?
Oh, I actually really, really enjoyed this match. Toni Storm is amazing. Anytime you get a chance to check her out, like, she puts on amazing matches every time out. And Nia Samuels looked really good too. The promo time was good. Like you said, developed a little character. It was a good match. I was kind of expecting Storm to run away with it, but it was a competitive match and it was an enjoyable match. The whole card was really good, but this definitely fit in on the opening episode here. And as to further people I'd like to see, I don't know. I've seen a little bit of Ginny, and I'd like to see her more in. I imagine she'll probably show up on this brand at some point. Can't really think of anybody else right off the top of my head here. But they've got a great start with these two already, so I'm sure that they've got some more amazing women in the back pocket that they're going to build a strong division around.
Yeah, I'm sure Jenny is definitely going to be coming at some point. I'm fairly certain she is signed to NXT, so she probably will be making her debut soon. I also think Killer Kelly has also been signed to the NXT UK brand. I have been singing her praises for a long time now. She really was kind of one of the standouts of the first round of the Mae Young Classic for me in her match with Meiko Satomura. She looked really good, even in defeat. I love her presentation. She strikes me as like a more talented version of Sonya Deville from the main roster, where she's got that shoot fighting gimmick about her, but she's got a little bit more agility. And I'm a huge Sonya Deville fan as well, so that's high praise coming from me. I would love to see the division built around them. Rhea Ripley, obviously, is going to be a big factor. But you know what? I mean, matches like this goes back to what we were talking about a few weeks ago with that tag match featuring Lacey Evans. You know, there were a few spots here and there that were a little sloppy. That tilt-a-whirl backbreaker that Samuels used on Tony kind of missed. I mean, it was close enough for government work where you could almost say that it hit, but it was very much a kind of a sloppy spot there. It's not that they're going out and having world-class matches every single week, but these matches are so much more fluid than they used to be. It's like the quality of women's wrestling in the WWE system is starting to elevate to the quality level that you would see in Joshi promotions. And that's always been kind of the big knock on women's wrestling in North America and in Britain, I guess, too, is, the women's wrestling has always paled in comparison to what the Japanese promotions have been putting on. But that talent gap is slowly closing. And you're seeing women's wrestling that's on par with the really excellent work that groups like Stardom put on. And so, it's going to be really interesting to see, how much talent for the Mae Young Classic does filter into NXT, both the OG in Florida and here in UK. I really need to quit saying NXT OG. That just sounds so lame. But you know what I'm getting at. There's an opportunity here to really make things sizzle in the women's division of both shows. They've got some excellent pieces, and we'll talk some about some of the women of the NXT Florida, I guess we'll call it, territory a little bit later tonight. A little bit later from last night, I should say. But in terms of last night's show, the main event, Tyler Bate and Wolfgang will be headlining next week's show. We had Johnny Saint out to do kind of like a special presentation for the main event, which was the NXT UK Championship match. Pete Dunne defending his title against Noam Dar. I love the presentation. I like the fact that Johnny Saint was out. It made it feel like a big deal to have the commissioner of the brand out for the championship match. I got to be honest with you. We were talking about the aesthetics of the venue earlier. When Pete Dunne walks out on stage and the camera is behind him and it's got like the camera view over his shoulder looking into the ring with Noam Dar and Johnny Saint and the referee standing there, that is just so cool. I just love the presentation. Of course, they did the bring the spotlights down onto the ring to kind of give the introductions, give it a big fight feel. Pete Dunne is absolutely in contention for MVP on the WWE system right now, whether he's in NXT, whether he's wrestling for NXT UK, his guest shots on the main roster over the last 10 to 12 months. This man is just absolutely crushing it. Everything he does just turns to gold. He's one of the most entertaining wrestlers in the world. He's one of the most talented performers in the entire WWE system. And that's no small praise considering some of the names that are in there. And from our conversations, we both seem pretty high on Noam Dar as well. And so as a main event for the debut episode, a UK title match to boot, Pete Dunne, of course, defending his title successfully with the bitter end to defeat Noam Dar. Match went about 10 to 15 minutes. Very solid match. I'd like to get your opinions on it here because I know that you were watching this intently. Pete Dunne and Noam Dar, two of the best young competitors in the system, having a real crackerjack match. What did you think of the match? And what are your thoughts overall on Pete Dunne as a NXT UK champion? Where do you see him going in the months and years to come? He's got a lot of potential.
Oh, yeah, I love Pete Dunne. And actually, my son, who we both know is a huge, huge wrestling fan, his current favorite wrestler in the world right now is Pete Dunne. And he actually made me create a wrestler on an old WWE video game of Pete Dunne. So
parenting done right, ladies and gentlemen. Parenting.
I have to say, it had actually turned out fairly well too. So But yeah, yeah, I'm a big fan of Pete Dunne. Uh, as listened to the last week's episode when you asked me who I'd build uh, a promotion around, and Dunne is my choice. The guy has everything you need. He's got unbelievable charisma. He's got the high flying moves. He's got the mat based wrestling. He can cut a decent promo. I love the guy. I think he's great, and I don't see a limit for the where he can ascend to going forward. As for the match, it was a really solid main event match, really good match. Uh, they meshed well. I liked how when Pete Dunne tried to do his first little corner flip that he always pulls off, uh, Noam Dar had that scouted, took him out. They had some good hard hitting moments, double clotheslines outside the ring, and just beating the 10 count back in. They kind of did it all through this match. Then Pete Dunne does his finger manipulation, smashes the hand, Noam Dar on the ground, ends it with the bitter ending. It was a really solid match, and I liked the little show of respect that they had at the end too. They went to shake hands, and then both pulled back and kind of, did a little gesture. I'm not sure what the gesture was, but it obviously meant something to them. It was a great sign of respect between two really, really talented individuals, and yeah, it was a great main event.
Let me ask you a question, and this is a question that I've seen floating around out in the ether for a little bit, and it's worth talking about given the appearances that Pete Dunne in particular has made in the original NXT show from Florida. Do you like the fact that there's appears to be some crossover between NXT UK, and 205 Live talents going between the shows? Or would you prefer that these shows were a bit more self-contained? Because I know we enjoy seeing people like Tony Nese get a chance to go outside the box and have a great match at NXT. But I see people online talk about how they almost feels like by breaking down the borders, it almost lowers 205 Live to the level of NXT and NXT UK, where it becomes more like a developmental show. Does it bother you to see the crossover, or do you think that it's just an opportunity to see different styles of matches that we may not otherwise get a chance to see?
I like the crossover personally. Uh, I personally, in wrestling, along with any other venture, the more different styles, the more different personalities, the more um, interaction with people that have greater experience than you do, or less. It only helps everybody in the long run. I find that if you're going even into the world of business, take ideas from other ventures that may not have anything to do with your whatever you work in, and you can find that it really brings new ideas, new thought processes, and better processes to your business. And I think the same thing holds true here. Uh, maybe some of these guys don't get a chance to work with high flyers. So when you bring in somebody from like a Noam Dar or somebody from 205 Live, uh, they get a chance to experience working with a high flyer. Or when they brought Tony Nese, who's a little bit more of a ground based wrestler, it's a new style that maybe they don't have a chance to work with where they are. I think the cross pollination is only good, and it will only help everybody in the long run.
Um, as far as this episode of NXT UK, of course, being the first one, had an important task, which was to kind of establish itself as a standalone brand. You don't want to come across like a direct copy of NXT or any of the other shows on the network. What did you think of the show overall? Of the aesthetics of the talent that we saw, and how excited are you for the show moving forward?
Well, I'm looking forward to it. Knowing some of the talent that's there, it's going to be great. The venue is great. I'm not sure if they're always going to be taping there or if they're going to be moving around. But either way, that venue is spectacular. It has, like we talked before, great vibe for wrestling. I love the British crowds. They always bring a unique aesthetic to the show. Their chants are great. It gets people into it. Um, if they could keep up with what they just put out for their first episode, you've got a fan in me. Like, that was a great episode. Solid matches. keep going. I'm a fan, and I hope to check more of it out.
Well, these shows will be coming at you now weekly, Wednesday afternoons, 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. That's 8 p.m. In Britain. Of course, the time zones require the earlier time here in the States and in Canada. It would be interesting to see if they rearrange the schedule once the Mae Young Classic goes off the air. That's going to be one of the interesting things about these Wednesday blocks. Over the last month, they've really turned Wednesday into kind of like a wrestling showcase, because you had NXT from Florida down at Full Sail, always holding court on Wednesdays. Now you've got the Mae Young Classic, you've got 205 Live, you've got NXT UK now. That is a lot of choice wrestling for one day, and I'm going to be interested to see how they kind of structure this moving forward. All in all, though, echo your sentiments. Strong debut episode. I'm very much looking forward to next week's main event. Tyler Bate taking on Wolfgang. Of course, Tyler Bate, we sang his praises earlier as part of Mustache Mountain. We're going to get to see him in singles action. And, of course, we'll probably be getting more information on some of the titles. They do have a backlog of taped episodes in the can for NXT UK. I know that there's some talk of how the Mae Young Classic and the Evolution pay-per-view could affect things moving forward if the NXT Women's Championship is defended on that show or not. We're getting pretty close to that Evolution pay-per-view, so hopefully we'll be getting some resolution on that, officially at least, in the next couple of days. As far as NXT's sister brand down in Florida, just a little bit of news here. Apparently, WWE is floating the idea of doing a post-show for NXT. I caught this on social media and thought I would pass it along. It's not very long. It's only a couple of minutes, but on their social media platforms, Twitter, which is where I found this, have a very brief post NXT episode on Twitter, do a few promos with some of the talent. Very interesting, very worthwhile. So definitely go and check out WWE NXT's Twitter feed for those. They run about 3 to 5 minutes. I'm not sure how long they've been doing those. I haven't seen them before. This could be a new feature. But they are calling it an official post show for NXT. So it could be something that develops a little further in the weeks to come. I like the fact that they have a post-show wrap-up, especially one on social media. There's a lot of content to get through on Wednesdays, though, so it does not necessarily have to be seen right away, I guess, especially if you're wanting to watch NXT from Florida and then the Mae Young Classic back-to-back. You'll have to come back after a while and check that out, but it is something to keep an eye on. It's neat when they do stuff like that on social media. NXT has a really good track record of using social media to kind of tell their stories and move the product along. And I have no doubt that NXT UK will be the exact same. Before we jump into 205 Live, though, Greg, I have a big question for you. And this is a question that's been on everyone's mind since we started this show. What is your take on the 2018 Major League Baseball playoffs?
You know what? I'm a staunch Toronto Blue Jays supporter, so I haven't really been following the playoffs as closely as I should. But I know that your Red Sox are doing quite well there, Biff, and I've always been a little bit of a Sox supporter, so I'm probably throwing my hat with the Red Sox there, and glad to see that they're doing well.
And that's why he's the best host in the business, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, for that brief aside, completely conspicuous little interjection there. I'm sure Greg knows what's up, but we're going to move right along to WWE 205 Live from Washington, D.C. this week. You know something? Before the announcement of NXT UK, 205 Live was probably the show that I don't want to say least looking forward to this week, because obviously the show had a lot of promise. I was looking forward to seeing Akira Tozawa take on Drew Gulak, and I was interested to see where they were going to wind up going with TJP's character. So there's all sorts of different stories going on the 205 Live brand, but But the matches that were scheduled for NXT, I was almost overlooking 205 Live this week. I got to be completely honest with you. 205 Live may have had the best show of the three. That's just my personal opinion. I just enjoy the character work. I liked the way that they kind of flowed from one match to another. The presentation, I love Drake Maverick as the GM figure. He's one of my favorite authority figures in all of wrestling right now. He's right up there with William Regal from NXT in Florida. He, of course, welcomes us to the show this week, talking about the arrival of Mike and Maria Kanellis last week, Tony Nese getting a big upset win over Cedric Alexander. Of course, Buddy Murphy, the Cruiserweight champion, hopefully will be defending his title soon. We got a fatal five-way that was set up for this show. Of course, Nigel Percy and Vic Joseph all on commentary as per usual. The opening of the show really devoted to Drew Gulak and Akira Tozawa, and this was kind of furthering the Gulak, Gallagher, and Kendrick angle. Of course, the threesome broke up with Gulak and Gallagher turning on the Brian Kendrick. Akira Tozawa picks up a big win here via disqualification. Good, hard-hitting match. Real sick spot. Drew Gulak just being a complete jerk, biting poor Akira Tozawa's ear. That was kind of a gruesome little spot. But you know what? It was awesome. A nice little heel technique there. Just doing anything he can to inflict some pain. That was awesome. Jack Gallagher gets involved. Comes in. He basically triggers the disqualification. This is where Brian Kendrick comes out to save Akira Tozawa. Of course, the Brian Kendrick full of piss and vinegar, definitely upset from being betrayed by his former tag team partners. Shares a brief moment with Akira Tozawa, who's not exactly sure whether he can trust him or not. I really liked that. As far as the match goes, for as long as it lasted, it was hard-hitting. It was, nice, brutal, stiff little match. What did you think about this opener? And are you liking the direction they're going with the storyline between Gallagher, Gulak, and Kendrick?
Yeah, you know what? This was a fun opener. It was a good match. I liked they had a little bit of comedy in there too. As you said, it was a hard-hitting match, but they had the little comedy spot where Gulak covers up from Tozawa hitting him, and Tozawa pauses. Gulak brings his hands down, and then Tozawa punches him. I thought that was pretty humorous little spot. That ear bite was, a disturbing image, but at the same time, I loved it. It was, Gulak doing his heel shtick to the utmost. So it was great. You kind of not surprised that the DQ happened here. You kind of figured Gallagher would get involved, and I liked Kendrick coming out, but it was what I really loved was the whole little interaction between Kendrick and Tozawa at the end there. The look of distrust. It's a throwback to Kendrick and Tozawa having their issues in the past. They had that great street fight. What was it, about a year ago? Or I guess sometime last year, anyways. So I mean, it makes sense that Tozawa would have a little distrust of Kendrick. But it was an effective match. It was a good, hard-hitting match. It moved the storyline forward. I'm curious to see where it goes. It was excellent, though.
We had a series of promos on this show, kind of establishing some of the stuff that we could be looking forward to. And it definitely seems, chief among them, Tony Nese. I believe Tony Nese has definitely taken another step up. And we talked about this when he had his match with Johnny Gargano down in NXT. It felt like Tony Nese kind of had a little coming out party where he kind of showcased the fact that he's more than just opening card fodder. He could actually take a step up and be someone that could be looked at as not only a great wrestler, but a competent challenger. Of course, he has the history with Buddy Murphy. Buddy Murphy, of course, and Tony Nese in this little promo segment with Drake Maverick backstage talking about all the stuff that's coming up. Drake Maverick, again, continues to just be great. He's just an excellent springboard for these two guys. Tony Nese just kind of subvertly planting the seeds that he's going to be someone to be reckoned with. Friendships be damned with Buddy Murphy. Of course, the Juggernaut with the championship now on his shoulder. He's going to have a bullseye on his back. Tony Nese just continuing to take another step up. It really looks like they're trying to build him up as a contender for the Cruiserweight Championship. I'm in favor of it. I'm a fan of Tony Nese. Did you like the promo? Did you like the interaction between Tony and Murphy, who've had that partnership for a while now this year? And what do you think about Tony Nese? Do you think he could make a credible challenger for Buddy Murphy? Pretty much as his first real challenger is what it seems like they're going for here.
I thought it was a good promo. I like the vibe between Tony and Buddy, so it was looking good. And Drake's always good in all of these things, so that's a given. But yeah, I like how they're kind of showing the little splinters in the friendship. And you know what? If Tony Nese becomes the challenger for Buddy Murphy, then yeah, I'm all for that. I think they could put on a hell of a match and see where it goes. I think Buddy would probably retain, but you never know. They've pulled the rug out from under us before on 205 Live, so wouldn't be surprised to see them do it again.
We had a couple other promos here. Chief among them, Hideo Itami, basically promising to end Mustafa Ali's career next week in the last man standing match. I am so looking forward to that match. My body is so ready for Hideo Itami and Mustafa Ali. That feud has just been aces ever since they started fighting. It's just been a tremendous uppercard feud for 205 Live. Not as enamored with Mike and Maria Kanellis' promo personally. They'll be taking on Lince Dorado next week. Interesting to note, at last check, Mike Kanellis was actually 215 pounds. He's 10 pounds over the weight limit for 205 Live. So I'm not sure how they're going to parlay that into the storylines, if they're going to touch it at all. But you know what? I mean, Maria Kanellis, I enjoy Maria Kanellis. Mike, not as much. I mean, he's just kind of there for me. But, you know, it is another pairing for NXT. Another pairing for 205 Live, just to kind of give a little bit more depth on the undercard. So I'm kind of fine with it. Did either of these promos, and of course we need to take into account Mustafa Ali's response, kind of responding to the challenge from Hideo Itami. You know, Ali and Itami are just lighting it up right now. They are one of the hottest things going in 205 Live, and one of the hottest things going on the network in general. All of WWE's properties on their network, you know, Itami and Ali are proving that you can have a real standout feud and it not have to be on Raw or SmackDown or NXT for that matter. It's one of the most intense feuds that 205 Live has had in its existence. So what did you think of the promos? Are you looking forward to next week's match? And are you willing to come out with an opinion on who's walking away with the win between Itami and Mustafa Ali next week?
Yeah, the Canales video, I'm kind of the same boat. Maria's great. Mike is just kind of there. I'm willing to see where they go with them. They've done a great job of rehabbing some people's images on this show, so maybe they do the same with Mike Canales. But the Tommy and Ali videos, those were great. Like the Tommy one was just, it was short, it was to the point, but it was super effective at getting him across as a very vicious opponent that, you know, was going to put some fear into your heart. And I thought the Ali one, that one really stood out to me. It was a really, really strong promo for Mustafa Ali. And I liked the look with him walking in the rain there. It was cool. It was a little different than what we normally see. So that one stood out especially for me. And I'm with you on this one. This is a match that I am so pumped for. It's going to be a good match. I don't know. I think I'm going to go on record and say that Ali's going to finally put Tommy down. It's been the best feud in wrestling for the last little bit here, in my opinion. So I'm very much looking forward to this match, and I think Ali's finally going to exercise the demons, so to speak.
You know what? I'm going to play devil's advocate. I think Hideo Itami picks up the win, and I tell you why. I think that the feud between Tommy and Ali is going to continue. So I don't expect next week to be definitive in terms of like a absolute blow off. But that's purely for my hope that it's not the blow off because I want to see more from these two. I'm not ready for the feud to end. So I'm hoping that we get some sort of convoluted finish, not necessarily a cheap finish, but I hope that we get some sort of finish that prolongs it. In the end, Mustafa Ali needs to pick up the win because I think, especially with Buddy Murphy as your champion, the ultimate end goal needs to be getting Mustafa Ali to the championship picture by WrestleMania season next year. So, and you may or may not agree with that. I'd be happy to have your take on that, whether you think that's the direction they need to go or not. I would like to see this extend, so I'm going to go with Itami to pick up the win here, under the caveat that this is not the last match these two will have. But do you see Mustafa Ali as kind of the next heir apparent for the Cruiserweight Championship when we get to WrestleMania in New York next spring?
Yeah, and I mean, you know what? If Itami does win, I think that is perfectly fine with me if this feud continues because this has been aces. So I would be okay if that happens. I just think that Ali is going to take the win, and yeah, I agree with you. I think that Mustafa Ali, if as long as you build him up to it, would be the perfect contender for Buddy Murphy around the WrestleMania time. They would put on an incredible match that would have a great chance of stealing the show in my books, anyways.
You know something, and I want to springboard off of this subject into a general topic on 205 Live before we get to the main event, because the main event last night of the show was absolutely dynamite. It was just insane. But, you know, there is something that's kind of developing in 205 Live, and I'm not sure if you've noticed it or not. There seems to be a disparity between the talent and quality of the heel roster in 205 Live versus the babyface side. And what I mean by that, 205 Live has done an excellent job creating heel characters. You've got Drew Gulak and Jack Gallagher, just complete jerks. They have been all year long with Brian Kendrick as their until they turned on him. You know, you have Hideo Itami becoming this, you know, assassin type character that's just out to murder ball people. Buddy Murphy, the Juggernaut, just completely dominant all year long, just getting set up for his Cruiserweight title win in Melbourne. You've got TJP, who's completely disrespecting the luchadors, trying to rip their masks off, just being a complete jerk in the process. Whereas, and then Tony Nese here lately has really come on. He's kind of establishing himself as another heel on the rise. Whereas the babyface side of things, you have Cedric Alexander, who's been doing the fighting champion gimmick up until he lost the belt. Mustafa Ali, who's kind of the heart and soul of the brand. Leo Rush is kind of in this nebulous gray area. He's not really pure face or pure heel. He's somewhere in between. And Noam Dar is kind of the same way. He's technically a face, but he's also got that cockiness about him. It just seems like there's more heels than there are faces. And it makes it interesting when you consider the fact that a heel is currently holding the top championship on the show. And it really makes you wonder, you know, where are they going to go with the brand? Will Buddy Murphy be turning babyface with the title? Or will they, in fact, be moving the title on to Mustafa Ali and trying to get some mileage out of him? Where do you think the future lies for the brand? Is it too heel heavy right now? Or do you like the way that it feels being kind of a heel dominated show at the moment?
I've always leaned a little more to the heel side of fandom anyways, so I don't mind it. But I mean, they're not as much as they are heel heavy. They do have a few other faces that are there, because you've got all three of the Lucha House Party. I know they're kind of tied up with TJP right now, but they've been going in and out of all the other feuds. Kalisto with Buddy Murphy a couple weeks back was stellar. So you've got them, and now you've got Brian Kendrick, you got Akira Tozawa. So you do have a few more baby faces. I mean, obviously Cedric Alexander and Mustafa Ali are your two top baby faces, but there is a little bit more balance than it seems. It just seems that right now that the heels are kind of sticking out a little more prominently. But you build up a couple of these babyface guys, and I think you're okay. I think the balance is not all that bad right now, to be quite honest.
Well, speaking of heels and baby faces, we had our main event, which was a fatal 5-way. And here again, we see just a continuation of the build for Tony Nese. Tony Nese picks up the win in this 5-way, featuring Cedric Alexander, TJP, Grand Metalik, Lio Rush in this matchup. I got to be completely honest with you. I was really looking forward to Nikki Cross and Bianca Belair. I really wanted to see the NXT Tag Team Championship match. I'm a sucker for Pete Dunne. This was my favorite match of the week. I honestly believe that because it was just an insane car wreck. Just from the start, they were telling so many different stories in this match, whether it was, the story that they've been telling with Cedric about how he feels like he's lost a step. Or Lio Rush, who got a big pop because they were in his hometown here. You had TJP continuing his story with the Luchadors, trying to rip the mask off during the match. Tony Nese, of course, the story they're telling with him, trying to build him up into a legitimate title contender. And just some of the spots in this match. There's one in particular that just blew my freaking mind. TJP is going for basically a baseball slide from the inside out to the ring. And Grand Metalik springboards off the top rope to avoid it. And then hits a beautiful moonsault outside the ring in one fluid motion. It was just incredible timing. They had the gifs of it up on social media, so you can definitely go back and catch this on Twitter if you haven't seen it on the network yet. Grand Metalik does not get enough credit for what he brings to the table. He's never really prospered in WWE like a lot of people thought he would have, especially given how far he went in the Cruiserweight Classic itself. But this was just incredible timing from these two. Great spot. Just all sorts of action all over the place. All 5 guys look really good. I don't think anybody suffered from this. It was just an absolute amazing match. Tony Nese did pick up the win. He kind of stole the win from Cedric Alexander. The finish comes when Cedric uses the lumbar check to put Lio Rush down, but Tony Nese kind of come in and took advantage of that spot. He does pick up the win, so that's a big little notch for him as he stakes his claim as the number 1 contender to the Cruiserweight Championship. That's how we leave the air. Tony Nese kind of celebrating. It looks like it is, in fact, his opportunity coming up. This match, aces. Just absolutely fantastic. What did you think of the match? Did you like the winner? Were you rooting for someone else? And, just in general, what did you think of the show last night?
This, you hit the nail on the head. This was a great match for something that we didn't really know about going into the episode. This was just really announced at the start of this episode. This was like an amazing multi-man match. You already hit on that Grand Metalik TJP spot. That was just a thing of beauty. But there were a couple other really, really cool spots throughout this match. There's a really good spot with TJP, Tony Nese, and Lio Rush, where Nese does a roll-up on TJP as he's German suplexing Rush and pinning them both for at the same time. I mean, they kicked out, but a beautiful, beautiful spot. They had Alexander with just showing off his power with deadlifting TJP after the roll through on the one move. Tony Nese showing some beautiful power when he one-arm deadlift Lio Rush and then threw him over the top rope all with one arm. They're like all 5 of these guys had shining spots throughout this match. They did a good job of making it look like anybody could take the win. You had storyline progression with TJP still trying to steal masks throughout this, being the little dick that he's been being towards the luchadors here, showing the absolute disrespect, which I've been absolutely loving. You had Rush showing off his speed and his agility, Nice showed off his power. Alexander showed off why he was the champion for as long as he was. This was just an overall great match. And you know what? Tony Nese winning was, I think, a good call. Um, I was kind of thinking Alexander might get the win, just a redemption story. But I like where they're going with this, with him being unsure of himself, being thinking maybe he's lost a step. I think they're going to be telling an interesting story with Alexander going forward, and I'm looking forward to that. But yeah, this is an excellent match. Well worth checking out if you haven't seen it.
It was a great match, a great way to kind of cap off a show which it flew by. That's really the biggest testament to these shows. NXT UK felt the same way yesterday. 205 Live always feels just like such a breezy watch. It's simple, it's easy to follow, it just goes straight forward. One segment right after another. It never really feels like it drags. Last night was just incredible action from start to finish. Really good show. And that's kind of what you get. I know it sounds like a broken record week after week, but 205 Live just riding that hot streak, continuing to look really, really sharp coming out of SummerSlam. And as we head into November, of course, we have the NXT TakeOver War Games special coming up and Survivor Series. So we'll see what ends up happening on that front. As far as NXT itself goes, of course, we had the double main event promoted for last night. Bianca Belair and Nikki Cross resuming their little feud that they've had developed. And also we had an NXT Tag Team Championship match, the War Raiders, Hanson and Rowe, taking on the Undisputed Era's Kyle O'Reilly and Roderick Strong. That was the matches that were kind of hyped up for the show. We did get an extra match with Shayna Baszler. We also had another tag team match on this show as well. Before we get into NXT, though, let's throw out some plugs. We love to plug our fellow Los Ingobernables podcast family shows. Of course, later on tonight, here Thursday, 9 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. Central on YouTube, will be Two Guys, One Sport with our friends Crazy Chris Colgan and George Curtin Jerker Atzavis. Definitely check them out. That's some of the most fun you'll have all week listening to their take on the weekend wrestling. Just two absolutely wonderful human beings. So be sure to check out Two Guys, One Sport on Thursday evenings, 9 p.m. over on YouTube. Of course, the godfather of podcasting in the little family, Taker's Minion, along with Mr. Doc Shinju, another great friend of mine, with the Shooting the Breeze podcast. That comes your way Saturday mornings, 11 a.m. Eastern, 10 a.m. Central on YouTube. You can find the information both for Two Guys, One Sport and for Shooting the Breeze in our channel page. They're in our feature channel, so you can just link directly over there to them from here. Monday evenings, 8 p.m. Eastern, 7 Central, if you need a diversion from Raw, and judging by how terrible Raw has been lately, you probably do. Check out the Connoisseurs of Wrestling, talking wrestling history with George Atzavis, Taker's Minion, Legends Lover, and myself. That comes your way 8 p.m. Eastern, Mondays on YouTube. And the big news, of course, the Los Ingobernables family of podcasts are going to be moving to Twitch in December. So new Twitch channel, kind of a one-stop shop for all of your Los Ingobernables podcast needs coming at you in December. So an early Christmas present. We'll be talking internally about whether we're moving grounds for development over to Twitch or not. But in the meantime, of course, you still get our awesomeness every Thursday morning. We release new episodes covering the week's content of NXT, NXT UK, and 205 Live. With that said, plugs out of the way, time for the main event of tonight's show, NXT. This is the one that we were looking forward to. Two big matches, a double main event promoted. First things first, overall impression of NXT last night. What did you think of the show? Let down? Did it do exactly what it needed to do for you? Or did it exceed your expectations?
It did what it needed to do in most cases, and it exceeded my expectations in a couple. So I thought overall it was a pretty good show. The first match we'll get into, I think this kind of went exactly the way I thought it was going to. Uh, but the second main event, the Nikki Cross Bianca Belair, was great. It was a great match. I mean, and then it ended in a little something else that we will discuss later. But I thought that match kind of over or exceeded my expectations. It was better than their previous match, and then there was some pretty significant developments that happened at the end of that we'll get to when we get to that match.
This was definitely a show that moved some storylines forward. You know, we've been dealing with the Aleister Black investigation for several weeks now. Major appearance of the one and only Aleister Black here tonight to get to. We've also been dealing with the Undisputed Era running around just being complete jerks to anyone and everyone whose path they cross. There is a spoiler out of the ether. Now, I am not going to repeat it here, but I do want to make it known. If you are adverse to spoilers, be very careful where you go clicking. I accidentally had the main event of the next takeover spoiled for me ahead of time. Not going to relay that here. We generally don't like to give out spoilers, and we try to be a spoiler-free show. Judging from the news that I was accidentally spoiled on, we'll probably be finding this match to be officially confirmed in the next couple of weeks. So we're not going to have to wait too much longer to report on this. If it becomes officially announced on Twitter, we will cover it. At that point, it's no longer spoiler protected. WWE's already spoiled it themselves. But I do know what the main event of the next takeover will be. So we'll be getting into that in a couple of weeks. All I will say to that extent is we have a lot of storylines in NXT right now that have needed some progression, and we're about to get some progression. And we got some progression in this show. Let's just dump straight into it. The NXT Tag Team Championships on the line. Kyle O'Reilly and Roddy Strong of the Undisputed Era defending the titles against the War Raiders. I'm not sure if I would consider this the biggest match the War Raiders have ever had. They were definitely in some prominent spots in New Japan. As far as their NXT tenures go, I think this is absolutely the biggest spotlight they've had on them so far. And they treated this as a big-time match, which I really appreciated. Even though this was the opener, it was treated like a main event level match because it really is. It really is. The War Raiders are kind of becoming a babyface version of the Authors of Pain. They're kind of fitting that Road Warriors niche a little bit, where they're the big bruising tag team, but they're the baby faces. And so I thought that was kind of a neat twist on the Authors of Pain story, kind of the inverse of what they were. They treated this as a big match. They got the spotlight intros. Decent match. I wouldn't say it was the best tag defense that the Undisputed Era have had. I do generally like what I see out of the War Raiders. Maybe they were holding back here a little bit because we are getting on towards the time for the next takeover build to start. So that might have played a role into it. Not to diminish this match, though, it was a very good match. But as you said, it was a little bit predictable in how it would end. We did have a Bobby Fish sighting. Bobby Fish is back, and apparently he is cleared. So thankfully that knee injury seems to be, if not completely mended, it's very close to being mended. So hopefully we'll be seeing more of Bobby Fish in the weeks to come. He did play into the role. Of course, the Undisputed Era using their numbers advantage just to be complete dickheads here. That's their motif. They are excellent at it. I like the match. Thought it was good. I think it could be more. I think it's kind of the story of NXT right now. It's an appetizer. We're still waiting for the main entree. What did you think of the opening match? Were you disappointed by the disqualification ending? Or do you kind of accept it given the fact that we're probably seeing these teams go at it again in the near future on TakeOver?
I thought it was a decent match. I wasn't disappointed with the ending because I saw that ending coming from a mile away. Um, being that I once again, this is not a spoiler, but I expect that both of these teams are going to be involved in War Games. So it doesn't surprise me at all that that was the ending that they went to. But I like you said, the War Raiders kind of being the babyface team. Usually, you see a team like them and it screams heels, but they were doing the Road Warriors vibe, and it works. It was good. I like how they were basically dominated the match at the start. I've always loved when big teams like that slam their partner onto their opponents. I don't know why, but it's always been a favorite move of mine. So I was happy to see that. And then our Undisputed Era does the smart thing, takes out the bigger man's knee to take the advantage. They're using smart tag team tactics there, concentrating on the knee, keep going back to it, using the quick tags. So finally, when then Hansen did get the hot tag, he comes in and wreaks havoc. Adam Cole comes out thinking that the DQ was coming there, but he gets tossed out of the ring quickly. So it goes back and forth a little farther from there until you said Bobby Fish comes out. He comes out with the chair, starts smashing everybody with the chair to cause the DQ. But this, like I said, this was expected. It's progressing the storyline. I thought that the Undisputed Era was going to interfere in this right from the start. But I think that this should set up something fun for War Games, and I expect that will be a much, much more entertaining match than this one was. Not that this one was bad. This was a good match, especially for an opening match of the show. It was a strong match. But I agreed it was the appetizer for the main entree that should be coming to us down the road here.
It's going to be interesting to see. I think everybody kind of anticipates War Raiders and Undisputed Era are going to have some sort of part to play in War Games. If not another NXT Tag Team title match, these two little factions are far from being done with each other. And we'll have to see how the NXT UK brand plays into this. Of course, we had Pete Dunne kind of cycling around in this little group along with Ricochet. And so we'll see how that works out in the days and weeks to come. It was a good match. I'm looking forward to seeing more from these two teams because, I think there is more to be had from them. I think there's another level that they could go. But it was a very strong opener for the show. Like I said, it was kind of promoted as a two-match card, but we did get a few extra matches. Nikki Cross, I just have to give a brief shout-out to Nikki Cross, who is really just such a lovely person. I just love her crazy charm. She's just so great. So we had Shayna Baszler take on Britt Baker. Interesting little cameo here for Britt Baker. Shayna Baszler absolutely murder balls poor Britt. So this was not exactly what you would consider Britt's finest hour. Shayna continuing to tune up for the NXT Women's Championship match at Evolution, getting ready for Kairi Sane. This was very much just kind of a, oh, by the way, I'm still here match for her. Not too awful much to this. General Manager William Regal has an interview planning to talk to Nikki Cross about what she knows about the Aleister Black attack. Now, we'll see how that plays out as we get into the actual main event itself. One of the coolest spots of the week, I would say, coming up. We had a Biff sighting. Only Lorcan, the former Biff Busick, and Danny Burch got a pinfall victory over Tian Bing, Chinese Tian Bing, and Rocky. I like this tag team. I really like this tag team, actually. I think that it was unfortunate that they had the injury that kind of derailed their progress after NXT TakeOver Chicago. But in terms of NXT's tag ranks, when you get past the Undisputed Era, it feels like there's kind of this wide open field where any, traditional babyface tag team could really shoot up and take advantage of kind of the vacuum. I know the War Raiders are going to be trying to make that leap as we go into November. Only Lorcan and Danny Burch have just as much an opportunity. They're just hard-hitting, classic, beat you up tag team specialists. I love their gimmick. It's just like these throwbacks. They're kind of like almost like a mirror reflection of the Revival in that sense. They just beat you up and they grind you down. Whether you had thoughts of the Shayna Baszler squash match or this one with Oney Lorcan and Danny Burch, what did you think of the in-ring action on this week's NXT before we get into the main event?
I thought both of these were effective in just kind of reminding us that these people are out there. I mean, Shayna Baszler destroying people is always fun. You feel sorry for poor Britt Baker, but that's what you sign on for. You know you're going to get hurt when you face the Queen of Spades. So I liked it for what it was. And yeah, it was nice to see Oney Lorcan and Danny Burch back on our screen. So I hope to see them move into the title picture down the road. Obviously, War Raiders and Undisputed Era have their issues to get out of the way first. But they're a solid tag team. Bright future. I thought that Tian Bing, he's got a good look to him, so I hope to see a little bit more out of him. He's got some good size. So we'll see where he goes as well. But both of these, yeah, they just kind of gave you the reminder that this team and the Queen of Spades are out there. Don't forget about them, and they did their job.
One last little note here before the main event does kick off. William Regal does make it known that a major NXT Championship announcement is coming on next week's episode. So I would venture a guess to say that we'll probably find out, if not the specific match for TakeOver War Games 2, we'll definitely see some of the people that could be involved in the NXT Championship match. I would wager a guess to say Velveteen Dream is going to factor in at some point because he seems to have developed a little rivalry here with Tommaso Ciampa as of late. That'll be next week, so we'll be looking forward to that announcement. And, of course, some of the other matches that we suspect coming on the TakeOver card will need to be set up in the weeks to come as well. So we'll see how things shake out on that front. But now we come to the main event, and this match is kind of a match in two parts. There's the actual match, and then there's the angle that kind of closed out the show. And we'll touch on both of them right now. Of course, we've been looking forward to this match ever since the last one these two had. Bianca Belair and Nikki Cross, really good chemistry. Had a really great match a couple of weeks ago that felt like the first 10 minutes of an even better match to come. That's kind of what you get with NXT these days on the regular TV show. Kind of feels like you'll get a bunch of appetizers, and then every month or so you'll get that standout match like Pete Dunne and Ricochet going at it for 20 minutes and just making you feel all giddy and warm inside. This match looked like it was going to be kind of in that vein. They went a little bit further this time than they did last time, but it ended in a no contest because of the angle at the end of the match. So before we talk about the big return, which was kind of spoiled a little bit earlier, what did you think of this match in general? Do you think they hit a more consistent plateau in this match, or do you still think we're not seeing the very best that we could from Belair and Nikki Cross in the ring together?
I liked this match a lot. I thought they had much better chemistry in this match than the one a few weeks ago there. Hard hitting right after each other, right from the bell ring. It was a good back and forth match. Both of the competitors were looking really good through this. Belair showing off her power with the beautiful deadlift up into the Belair bomb. And then the military press that she did after that, and then the squats with Nikki Cross up there, Nikki got out of that, but still beautiful power shown by Belair. And I liked how Belair was kind of losing it at the end there, screaming at Nikki Cross to stay down every time that she kicked out. It was a great match. Once again, I thought it was better than their last match, but there's still more that could come. And if they ever let these two just go at it, I think that is going to be like a thing of beauty that will stick in your memory for a long time. But these two definitely can go in the ring. Definitely a good match. Definitely check it out.
Do you think that this match, and not just this match, but this feud, I would guess to say, between Nikki Cross and Bianca Belair, is this a bigger feud in your eyes than the feud over the NXT Women's Championship right now between Kairi Sane and Shayna Baszler? Because it honestly, to me, it almost feels like Bianca Belair and Nikki Cross have a more potent feud going than even the NXT Women's Championship feud.
Yeah, it does feel that way. And I'm wondering, maybe it's because they're doing that feud for the Evolution pay per view, and this one's exclusively on NXT. So maybe that's part of why we're getting a little bit of the disjointed, not feeling the championship feud is more important. But yeah, Bianca Belair and Nikki Cross have a excellent thing going here, and the feud's good. We've gotten to now two matches that have gone to no contests. So I'm really looking forward to seeing the match that finally determines who could win this match.
Now, the match itself was very good, but of course, what a lot of people are going to take away from it is the ending. If you've been following our show, we've been kind of covering it. If you've been watching NXT over the last couple of weeks, you know about Nikki Cross's involvement in the Aleister Black storyline. Nikki Cross has been telling everyone that she knows what's going on. Well, Aleister Black appears here. Aleister Black is sitting in the ring after the lights go out during the match. So this is kind of the no contest. The match just kind of ends when Aleister Black pops up. Nikki Cross loves his appearance in the ring. She just starts having a fit over him. Aleister tries to stop her. Basically just, trying to get her to tell him what she knows. She does eventually whisper in his ear, and the show goes off the air with Aleister Black just absolutely incensed, seething. Now, I'm going to be complete fanboy here. The chemistry between Nikki Cross and Aleister Black, it is intoxicating. I ship it so hard. Complete fanboy, fangirl, whatever you want to call it, fangirl moment there. I would love to see Nikki Cross and Aleister Black have more interactions with each other. Having said that, as far as the angle itself goes, it looks like we're about to get that resolution. Aleister Black now knows who attacked him, and I'm guessing if we don't find out next week, we'll be finding out immediately after, in terms of the storyline's conclusion. But this can't go on much longer now that Aleister actually knows who got attacked him. So what did you think of this? Did you like the way they kind of teased it out? Do you like the fact that we still have to wait another week before we find out the truth? And what did you think of the ending itself? Did you like the way they did this angle, or do you think it did a disservice to the match that it interrupted?
You know what? I liked it. Once again, like I would have loved to have seen this match to its conclusion, but they're building it up. And when we do eventually get it, it'll be a great match. But I liked this angle. I think it's fitting in with the whole vibe that's been going on. It's great to see Aleister Black back. And I'm loving the fact that Nikki's getting the chance to interact with the big names in the show. Last week she was with Tommaso Ciampa and Velveteen Dream, and more than held her own with those two. And then just the interaction with Aleister in this, with the little hand signals, and then the come here from Aleister Black, and just Nikki's just so good in these. Her facial expressions, the way she sells it, the little crawl over to Aleister Black to whisper the whatever she knows into his ear. I thought this was great. I thought it was a good ending. And yes, as much as I'd love to know, okay, who is it? I think they're playing this well. They do need to probably let us know by next week or shortly after who this the attacker is. But as of right now, I'm liking how they handled this storyline and where it's been and where it's going.
It's been the storyline that's kind of carried the show since Brooklyn, and is probably going to be the storyline that helps carry the show through to Los Angeles in November when we get to take over War Games 2. We will have full coverage of all three shows next week. 205 Live, of course, as usual, but we'll also be covering NXT UK and NXT from Florida. Hopefully, we'll get that resolution next week. As far as this week's show goes, though, I mean, it was a good show. I enjoyed both of the matches that were advertised. I can't put it ahead of 205 Live this week, and I can't really put it ahead of NXT UK. I think the match quality might have been better on this show than in NXT UK, but just kind of the uniqueness and the freshness of NXT UK, it counts for a lot, especially in a premiere episode, kind of the newness of it, seeing what all's what. In general, though, all three shows definitely worthwhile checking out. They were good shows. Definitely got some plot advancement for all three shows moving forward. So we'll see the lay of the land as we move further into October. It's scary how quickly this month is going, though. We're already past the halfway point of the month. We're 2 weeks away from Halloween. So month is flying by. The year is winding up in a hurry, and all eyes are kind of set now towards November as we get on towards Survivor Series and TakeOver weekend. But we'll keep you up to date on everything that's going on. And as far as the shows themselves go, that wraps up our recap this week. Time to turn the show back over to our host. Greg, been a full show. We got an extra recap. Kind of filled up our time this week. But you know what? It was well worth it because there were 3 excellent shows this week.
They definitely were. If you haven't had a chance to check these out, definitely do so. If you don't get a chance to check the shows out, tune in to us, and we will give you everything you need to know about them, keep you up to date. Other than that, thank you. Excuse me. Thank you all for tuning in again. We appreciate everybody that listens. We love you all. If you have any comments or feedback that you want to give us, hit us up on our email. It's on the bottom of the show information there. We'll get back to any questions, any responses, and we'll respond back to you. Otherwise, Biff, where can they find you?
Well, if the Red Sox and the Astros continue to sap years off my life, you might find me in a graveyard before the end of this weekend is out. I am I'm considering taking up tiddlywinks later tonight instead of watching the next game. I'm not sure my poor heart could take it. Generally, you can find me over at Cage Side Seats as Biff Kensington during the daily and nightly threads. I'm very pleasant in the daily and nightly threads. If you get me in the other threads, though, look out below. My argumentative side takes over. I try to be a nice guy. I don't try to be a jerk. I promise. You can find me on Twitter at RealDealBiff. All the information is down in the info box, or the doobly-doo, as John Green calls it. Outside of the guest appearances on Thursdays and Saturdays, I'm always here, Grounds for Development, and on Mondays at the Connoisseurs of Wrestling. Where can they hit you up during the week, Greg?
You can find me on Cage Side, mostly hanging out in the daily. I don't get into the nightly very often, but almost always in the daily, and you can catch me occasionally on some of the other threads under the name The Saskatchewan Spin and Nerve Hold. You can hit me up on Twitter at GW Klein, KLEIN 75. Or you can also hit us up on our show Twitter at Grounds for Dev 1. We always look forward to any interaction with all of our listeners. And other than that, thank you again for tuning in, and we hope to see you again in the near future.
Be kind and rewind, everyone. Always a good rule of thumb.
Yes, indeed.